The Mating Mind, by Geoffrey Miller. Introduction. Have you ever stood in a great museum, maybe in New York or Paris, and felt a sense of awe? On one side of the street, you might have the Museum of Natural History, filled with dinosaur bones and dioramas of our ape-like ancestors, a testament to the long, hard climb of survival. It's a story of teeth and claws, of finding food and avoiding becoming food. It's the story of what we needed to do to survive. But then, you cross the street to the Museum of Art. And suddenly, you're in a different world. A world of Rembrandt self-portraits, of peacock-shaped sittars, of poetry, music, and breathtaking sculptures. This isn't the story of survival anymore. This is the story of something else. Something extra. Something beautiful and, from a purely survivalist point of view, utterly useless. How did we get from one side of that street to the other? How did a species of clever apes, whose primary concerns were food and safety, suddenly start painting the Sistine Chapel, composing symphonies, and telling jokes? The traditional answer, the one you've probably heard, is that all these wonderful things, art, morality, humor, creativity, are just happy accidents. They're byproducts of having a big, clever brain that evolved for making tools and outsmarting predators. Our intelligence was a survival tool, like a Swiss Army knife, and art was just something we figured out how to do with a corkscrew attachment in our spare time. But what if that story is completely backward? What if the things we prize most about ourselves, our creativity, our kindness, our wit, aren't accidents at all? What if they are the very reason our minds evolved to be so magnificent in the first place? That is the revolutionary idea at the heart of The Mating Mind by evolutionary psychologist Geoffrey Miller. This book, which has sold hundreds of thousands of copies and reshaped our understanding of human nature, proposes something radical. It suggests that the human mind evolved not as a survival machine, but as a courtship machine. By the end of our journey today, you will understand a profound secret about your own nature, that our most cherished human abilities evolved for the same reason a peacock has its extravagant tail, to attract a mate. You'll see that our ancestors, through their simple choices of who they found charming, witty, and kind, became the intelligent designers of the very minds we have today. This isn't just a story about the past, it's a story about the hidden forces that shape your desires, your talents, and your search for connection right now. Let's begin. Book summary. The story of every living thing on this planet is a story of two great struggles. The first is the struggle to survive. The second is the struggle to reproduce. For a very long time, we thought the first struggle explained everything. Charles Darwin called it natural selection, the survival of the fittest. The creatures best adapted to their environment live long enough to pass on their genes. It's a powerful, elegant idea, and it explains so much about the natural world. But there was one thing that kept Darwin up at night. One beautiful, illogical, magnificent thing that seemed to mock his grand theory. The peacock's tail. He once wrote to a friend, "The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail, whenever I gaze at it, makes me sick." Why? Because the tail made no sense from a survival perspective. It's heavy. It's cumbersome. Its bright colors are like a giant neon sign for predators, screaming, "Eat me, I'm right here." A peacock would survive much better with a short, drab, lightweight tail. So why did it have this glorious, burdensome ornament? The answer, Darwin realized, was the key to a second, equally powerful evolutionary force. He called it sexual selection. Natural selection is about adapting to the environment. Sexual selection is about adapting to the preferences of the opposite sex. The peacock's tail didn't evolve to please Mother Nature. It evolved to please the peahens. Over countless generations, the peahens consistently preferred males with slightly more elaborate, more colorful tails. Those attractive males got to mate more, and they passed on their genes for big, beautiful tails. At the same time, the peahens passed on their preference for those tails to their daughters. The two forces, the male trait and the female preference, became locked in a positive feedback loop. It's like an evolutionary fashion cycle. The tails got bigger and brighter, and the peahen standards got higher and higher, until the tail became the spectacular, almost absurd, ornament we see today. It's a terrible tool for survival, but it's a brilliant tool for seduction. This is the central idea that Geoffrey Miller uses to unlock the mystery of the human mind. He asks a simple question: what if the human mind is like the peacock's tail? What if our most dazzling mental abilities, our capacity for art, music, storytelling, humor, and even kindness, evolved not because they helped us survive, but because they helped us attract mates? Think about it. Our minds are far more creative, witty, and articulate than we would ever need for basic survival on the African savanna. We can build shelters and find food with the intelligence of a clever chimpanzee. But we don't just communicate, we write poetry. We don't just make sounds, we compose symphonies. We don't just have social rules, we have complex moral philosophies. From a survivalist viewpoint, these are all extravagant wastes of energy. But from a sexual selection viewpoint, they are exactly what we would expect to see. They are courtship displays, designed to attract and entertain sexual partners. They are the human equivalent of the peacock's tail. This idea was so radical that, even after Darwin proposed it, it was ignored by the scientific community for over 100 years. It was seen as too strange, too focused on the frivolous whims of female animals. Scientists were comfortable with the idea of males fighting each other for dominance. That felt serious, like business. But the idea that the aesthetic tastes of females could shape the course of evolution? That seemed absurd. So, for a century, biology focused almost exclusively on survival of the fittest. And the human mind remained the last great mystery, a citadel that Darwinism couldn't seem to conquer. It was only in the late 20th century that Darwin's lost idea was rediscovered, and scientists finally had the tools to understand its incredible power. So, how exactly does this courtship machine work? Miller explains that there are a few key mechanisms driving sexual selection. The first, as we saw with the peacock, is what's called runaway selection. This is the fashion cycle feedback loop. Imagine our early hominid ancestors. Suppose a few females developed a slight, random preference for males who could make slightly more interesting vocal sounds. Those males would have a slight reproductive edge. Their sons would inherit the ability to make those sounds, and their daughters would inherit the preference for them. Over time, the sounds could become more complex, turning into song, and the preference for musical skill would become more refined. The trait and the taste run away together, producing something far more elaborate than what would be needed for survival. This could explain why certain traits seem to pop up in one species but not in closely related ones. Why did humans get language, but chimps didn't? Maybe our lineage just happened to fall into a runaway process that favored verbal skill, while the chimp lineage didn't. Runaway is unpredictable and capricious, which helps explain the beautiful, seemingly random diversity of life. But runaway selection has its limits. It predicts that courtship traits will evolve mostly in one sex, usually males. But in humans, while there are some differences, both men and women have incredibly complex minds. Men's brains are, on average, only slightly larger than women's, and there is no difference in general intelligence. If our brain was a pure runaway trait like the peacock's tail, we'd expect men to have massive, brilliant brains and women to have brains the size of a chimpanzee's. This clearly isn't the case. This leads to the second, and perhaps most important mechanism: fitness indicators. Imagine you're choosing a partner. You can't see their genes directly. You can't get a printout of their DNA to check for harmful mutations. So, how do you know you're choosing someone with good genes, who will give your offspring the best chance at a healthy life? You look for clues. You look for signals of health, energy, and intelligence. But here's the problem: anyone can say they're healthy and smart. A signal is only useful if it's reliable, if it can't be faked. So how does evolution create honest signals? The answer is through what's called the handicap principle. An honest signal of fitness must be costly. It must be a handicap, something that an individual in poor health or with bad genes simply couldn't afford to produce. A Rolex watch is a reliable signal of wealth not because it tells time better than a cheap digital watch, but because it's so expensive that only a wealthy person can afford one. The cost is the guarantee of honesty. The peacock's tail is a handicap. It costs a huge amount of energy to grow and maintain, and it makes the peacock more vulnerable to predators. Only a truly healthy, fit peacock can afford such a handicap. A sickly peacock that tried to grow a magnificent tail would quickly be eaten or die of exhaustion. So, when a peahen sees a male with a spectacular tail, she's not just admiring its beauty, she's getting reliable information about his genetic quality. She's thinking, wow, any guy who can survive with a tail like that must have incredible genes. Miller argues that our most impressive mental abilities are handicaps. They are costly displays that function as fitness indicators. Take our brain itself. It's only 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. Growing and running a big brain is incredibly expensive. Just thinking hard for a few hours can leave you feeling exhausted and hungry. Why is it so costly? Because that cost is what makes our mental displays honest signals of our fitness. Behaviors like witty conversation, artistic creation, or composing music are difficult to do well. They require a brain that is healthy, efficient, and well-developed. Someone with a lot of harmful mutations or poor health would struggle to be a brilliant conversationalist. This is why we find certain qualities so attractive. Think about art. From an evolutionary perspective, art seems like a total waste of time. Why would our ancestors have spent hours painting on cave walls or carving intricate figurines when they could have been hunting or gathering? The answer is that art is a phenomenal fitness indicator. To create a beautiful piece of art requires manual dexterity, fine motor control, an eye for symmetry, patience, and a huge amount of time. It demonstrates conscientiousness and intelligence. The famous prehistoric hand axes, for example, are often found in pristine condition, unused. Many are far too large or too small to be practical tools. They are beautifully symmetrical, made with a skill that went far beyond what was necessary for butchering an animal. Archaeologists now believe these hand axes were not tools, but works of art, the first in human history. They were sexual ornaments, created by males to impress females with their skill and genetic quality. The same logic applies to morality and kindness. Standard evolutionary theory has a hard time explaining altruism. Why would we be kind to people who aren't our relatives and might never pay us back? The answer, Miller suggests, is that kindness is sexually attractive. In a massive study of sexual preferences across 37 cultures, kindness was rated as the single most important trait in a partner, by both men and women. It was ranked higher than looks, intelligence, or wealth. Why? Because acts of generosity, sympathy, and fairness are costly handicaps. They are hard to fake. A truly selfish, manipulative person might pretend to be kind for a short while, but it's difficult to keep up the act for long. Genuine kindness reveals a person's character, their ability to care for a partner and for children. When our ancestors were choosing mates, they weren't just looking for good genes, they were looking for good partners. Someone who was kind and generous was a much better bet for a long-term relationship. So, Morality didn't evolve because it was good for the group. It evolved because it was sexy. Our moral virtues are sexual ornaments, designed to attract mates by advertising our character. And then there is the greatest human ornament of all, language. Other animals have communication systems, but they are incredibly limited. A monkey might have a call for leopard, another for eagle, and a few for social messages. But they can't combine these calls to create new meanings. They can't tell stories about the leopard they saw last week, or speculate about where the eagle might build its nest next year. Human language is infinitely creative. Our average vocabulary is around 60,000 words, but we only need a few hundred to get through a normal day. Why do we have this vast, luxurious vocabulary filled with rare and beautiful words? Because language is our primary courtship display. It's how we reveal our minds to one another. Verbal courtship is how we showcase our intelligence, our creativity, our knowledge, our personality, and our sense of humor. Think of Cyrano de Bergerac, the poet with the enormous nose who could win any woman's heart with his words. Or think of Scheherazade, the storyteller who saved her own life and won the king's love by weaving tales for 1001 nights. Their stories are romantic because they are true to a deep evolutionary logic. A mind that can entertain, surprise, and delight another mind is an incredibly attractive mind. A large vocabulary is a fitness indicator. It correlates highly with intelligence, and intelligence is a sign of a healthy, well-developed brain. A quick wit is a display of mental agility. The ability to tell a good story demonstrates memory, imagination, and social intelligence. This explains why we spend so much time just talking. From a survival perspective, a lot of our conversation is useless gossip. But from a courtship perspective, it's all important. We are constantly assessing each other's minds through the words we use. When we're on a first date, we're not just exchanging information, we're performing. We're putting our minds on display, hoping that the other person will find our performance attractive. This brings us to the most playful of our mental ornaments, creativity and humor. Why do we find novelty so appealing? Why is a good sense of humor, or ESO, one of the most common requests in personal ads? Because creativity is the ultimate courtship strategy. The ability to constantly produce new ideas, new jokes, and new stories is a powerful way to keep a partner interested. It's an anti-boredom device. In the long-term relationships that were crucial for raising human children, a partner who could keep you entertained was a partner you were more likely to stick with. Humor is a particularly potent form of creative display. To make someone laugh, you have to surprise them. You have to violate their expectations in a clever, non-threatening way. This requires a deep understanding of their mind, and the cognitive flexibility to play with ideas. A good sense of humor is a sign of a brilliant, agile, and socially intelligent mind. It's no wonder we find it so irresistible. It is, quite literally, the wit to woo. So, when we look at the whole suite of human mental abilities, we see a pattern. The things that make us most human, the things we value most in ourselves and others, all bear the hallmarks of sexual selection. They are costly, elaborate, and beautiful. They are not tools for survival, they are works of art. Our minds did not evolve to be practical. They evolved to be interesting. They evolved to be beautiful. And they became that way because, for hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors fell in love with people who had beautiful minds. They chose partners who could make them laugh, tell them stories, and show them kindness. In doing so, they acted as the artists who sculpted the human brain. We are the living embodiment of their desires. We are the descendants of the poets, the artists, and the comedians of the Pleistocene. Commentary. What I love about this idea is how it completely flips our perspective on human nature. It suggests that the most beautiful, noble, and joyful parts of our experience aren't just decorative extras, they are the central engine of our evolution. It takes the things that traditional science dismissed as frivolous, art, music, humor, love, and places them at the very heart of the human story. This doesn't reduce our highest achievements to a crude sex drive. It does the opposite. It elevates courtship from a simple biological function to a powerful creative force. It suggests that the search for a partner is not just about reproduction, it's about finding a mind that fascinates and inspires our own. Our ancestors weren't just looking for healthy bodies, they were looking for interesting souls. And in that search, they built the very souls we now possess. So, how can we carry this profound lesson into our own lives? First, the next time you feel a sense of beauty, whether it's from a piece of music, a painting, or even a well-told joke, take a moment to appreciate it not just as a pleasant experience, but as a connection to this deep evolutionary history. Recognize that the thrill you feel is a distant echo of the thrill an ancestor felt when they encountered a mind that was creative, skillful, and intelligent. You are, in that moment, using a beautifully evolved capacity for judgment that has been millions of years in the making. Second, think about how you present yourself to the world. We live in a society that often tells us our value lies in our job title, our income, or the things we own. But the mating mind reminds us that our most attractive qualities are far more fundamental. Your kindness, your sense of humor, your ability to tell a good story, your passion for an idea, these are your true ornaments. They are the indicators of the health and vitality of your mind. Don't hide them. Cultivate them, and display them generously. Finally, when you're getting to know someone, remember that you are participating in this ancient and beautiful process of mutual choice. You are not just assessing them, you are being assessed. And the most important assessment is not about superficial qualities, but about the mind and character within. Listen to their stories. Pay attention to their acts of kindness. See if they can make you laugh. You are looking for more than a partner, you are looking for a mind that your mind can dance with. That was a summary of The Mating Mind by Geoffrey Miller. We've touched on the grand ideas today, but I want to be honest with you. No summary can ever replace the experience of reading the book itself. The real magic isn't just in knowing the theory, it's in the journey the author takes you on, the countless fascinating examples, and the quiet moments when an idea clicks into place and changes the way you see everything. This summary is your map, but the book is the territory. If anything we've discussed has sparked your curiosity, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's an adventure into the very heart of who we are. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It tells us that these deep dives matter, and it ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Thank you for joining me, and let's keep growing together.